Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Talented Learning Demonstration Series. This is our favorite series of content because we get to travel the world virtually and look at the best learning system solutions and see what's innovative and see where the world is going. And today's no different. In fact, it's probably better than most because we're with Docebo. We have Scott Peacock here, who's the Global VP of Solution Engineers, and he's going to be taking us through a nice demonstration showing us the core system and some innovations and some new stuff that they have. For those of you that aren't following the marketplace, Docebo's everywhere. They're the fastest growing learning solution in the world right now. They're a perennial winner on the Talented Learning Annual Awards for almost 10 years in a row now. And I think the claim to fame that I like the best is that they're the first to market on all kinds of innovations since I've been following them for the last 10 years, from social to gamification to coaching to micro learning to now AI and much, much more. And it's always fun to get together with Docebo and be able to see what's coming down because this is the first time I'm going to see a lot of it. So with that introduction, Scott, it's all yours. Show us what we need to know.
Awesome. I appreciate you having us on, John, and it's good to be here. Scott Peacock here, VP of Solutions Engineering at Docebo, and I've been about 5 years. So hopefully I can guide us through some of the exciting stuff that we've been building in the last, decade, 2 decades almost now as a company. So
cool.
Yeah. We're going to start with just one quick slide to dive into the demonstration experience. Really, Docebo is a learning platform that's built for the business of learning. The idea here is that, most of the customers and clients that partner with us have multiple use cases that they're trying to solve for, right? Yeah, sure. Occasionally an organization is just trying to do compliance or just trying to do onboarding. But a lot of the times where people get the most value out of Docebo as a platform is when they have, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 use cases where they're really doing education and enablement across multiple audiences. And where we see that come to fruition is really, in 2 main buckets, which is internal and external. Internal being your onboarding, compliance training, sales enablement, talent development, all the things that are going to drive the business forward as an organization. And then from an external perspective, that's everybody that's outside of your HRIS, right? You're thinking about customers, partners, in situations where you're a QSR or a retail franchise organization. You typically have distributed audiences, sometimes with many, many different sources of truth. And one of the most important things about a learning management system and a learning management platform in general is being able to bring all of those audiences together, understand who they are, give them the right training at the right time for them, and then measure the impact that that's having long term.
Cool.
So, what we wanted to do is just kind of set the stage with that and then highlight some of the different ways that people have used the Docebo platform. An example would be from a more basic perspective. Hey, we might have a username and password. People log in, they get access to the system. Maybe there's a self-registration if you're looking to do, from a customer perspective. Organizations like AWS have built their skill builder on Docebo, and it's, publicly available. People can go in, register for training. And you'll notice that, we also have the ability to block things behind things like subscriptions, or if you wanted to set up an e-commerce workflow. Organizations have built their entire business on Docebo and the way that we can deliver e-commerce through the platform. Still focusing on external perspective, it's also possible that you don't want to sell the training necessarily, but you do want external folks to come in and take some training. So Zoom is another good example where they've set up an environment that people can just go in, watch some content, get educated on how to use Zoom. And this is obviously, they're already Zoom customers, but even if you're not a Zoom customer, you can come in, take a look, get interested, get educated, and maybe that will turn you into a customer as well. But for today, what we're going to do is we're going to log into a platform just more from an internal perspective. Let's say that, we're not using, any kind of really complex external environment, but we might want to expose somebody to the basic training that they have to get through. So, hey, if certifications are up and coming, the platform's going to call that out for you. If you've got some, training that you need to get through, it's going to be front and center. One of the most interesting things, though, about Docebo, this is all table stakes so far, is that Depending on who someone is and where they are in their journey, they might see something completely different. So it's possible that the first time someone logs into the system, they see something more like this, like, hey, welcome to onboarding. We know who you are. We know what the journey you're going through. And when someone goes through that experience and they complete week 3, for example, they might automatically get, moved into their ongoing training experience. So the system will recognize that they've gotten through a certain part of their journey, and it doesn't just give them new training or new courses. It'll change their homepage. It'll change the experience that they have access to. It'll change potentially even features and functions of the system. We've seen organizations set up a world where you can't access social learning until you've done your compliance and anti-harassment training. Right? And that just kind of makes sense, but it's important for the system to be able to respect those rules, right?
Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't have to be two. So as you graduate into a certified instructor or really any role, then you can just keep on modifying the experience, based on those attributes. That's cool.
Exactly. And that's one of the more important things too, is, if you're a certified instructor, or if you have, a certain amount of power that you're supposed to have in the system, you can have both a dedicated instructor hub that identifies, like, here's the things that we would expect you need to have access to. But also you'll notice now I have the ability to open up an administrative menu, right? I have access to reports and I have access to certain things, but you almost certainly don't want to expose folks to that kind of power until they've gone through the training. And the interesting thing is, obviously, it's a learning management platform. It kind of allows you to educate people on all the things they need to do and then move them into the place where they can do those things, especially from an LMS instructor perspective. Yeah, one of the other things we've noticed is, let's say someone is going through the environment, they have their own training, but maybe they're a director level or they have some elevated access in the environment. They may still have their own training, but they don't have to have a separate administrative profile or something along those lines, right? We can provide them with a dedicated director dashboard that does give them access to reporting, maybe only over their department, but also gives them access to all of the training that they're supposed to be doing, right? And they can dive into the actual education and it'll guide them through it. So really, that's one of the more important things. A lot of systems these days have the ability to deliver different training based on who you are, but this delivers different experiences based on who you are and then guides you through those experiences as they change. Many of our partners, they don't want to start with something crazy. They want to have 3 buttons when someone comes into the system for the first time. And one of them is just a tour of the LMS. Maybe it's a course dedicated to getting folks up to speed. The system watches all that. Once they've completed that training, it moves them into a world where they've got more features turned on. They've got gamification and badges and stuff like that configured, because now you're ready for it, right?
Yeah. It's really takes adaptability or learner adaptability or personalization to the next level of it's now platform and content.
Yeah, exactly. It's platform adaptability rather than just, courses with prerequisites, right?
Cool stuff.
Yeah, and I mean that's an important piece of the puzzle, right? We have to, nail the basics, right, as it were. When we think about a learning plan, of course, we have the ability to set up, e-learning, instructor-led training, hybrid sessions, right? So a situation where you have something that's being done in person, but some folks maybe can't join, so you're streaming it. All of that can be organized in a single course, right? And one of the important things is that when someone is going to do, let's say, their sales and operations training or something along those lines, if they've never been to that spot, it's really helpful to get guided step by step. So the system is going to be able to give them that guidance, show them what that building might look like if they've never been there before, right? It's like, oh, okay, I just need to look on the street for the one that's covered in leaves and greenery, and that's where I need to be. But like I said, we have to nail the basics. When it comes to e-learning, there's a lot of flexibility here. A lot of our customers, they come to us, they have stacks and stacks of PDFs. Some of them have huge libraries of videos, and some are doing full-blown SCORM and XAPI packaging, and they need an LRS that we can write to. So we, span the gamut. When it comes down to it, this is an example of a course. We've organized it into a couple different folders. And, it's a pretty comprehensive course. This has got PowerPoint presentation, embedded video, MP4, things like that. One of the interesting things is that the system will actually track where I was last in the environment. So if I wanted to kind of dive into a specific aspect of the training, it'll know that I'm on page 10. If I close my laptop, open up my phone, it'll drop me exactly on page 10. But also you get the reporting on the back end, right? So you know where people are dropping off. How far did they get through the training before they kind of lost their way or got distracted by something else? Of course, we've got full SCORM reporting as well, meaning that you get all of the CMI data. You can see exactly where people are and how long they spent on different activities. But what's also interesting is we have the ability to build tests and surveys directly in the system. So, of course, if your authoring tool, we play nice with all authoring tools, but if your authoring tools is putting out a SCORM package, you're going to get all that data, but you can also just build a test or something along those lines directly in the system as well. One thing that we've seen has really been important, especially for folks that are, remote, hybrid remote, or doing any kind of soft skills training, is this idea of an assignment where we want to challenge someone. It's great that you've done all this learning, but now it's time to prove that you can do what you said you can do. And that might be from a sales perspective, recording a pitch and submitting that in. Or it might be a person who's learning how to use some software or customer training, for example, and you can actually watch them interact with your software for the first time. So it'll actually allow you to record their screen. You can walk through that experience and then submit that in for some help. We've seen CSMs, customer success managers, working with their charges and, watching them interact with the software right after they did the training. And, this is something we do internally as well, where, hey, we see that a customer is struggling with a certain area of our system. We'll send that over to the product team. They want to see, more than anything, they want to see people interacting with their software for the first time, right? So you can really drive value outside of just the learning organization and start positively impacting your customers from a development perspective as well. Yeah. And so far, we've looked at the idea of formal learning inside of the environment. You've got your courses, you've got your videos and your tests. You may also want to expand on that a little bit and allow for some question and answer. And one of the interesting things about the system is if somebody comes in here and says, hey, I have a question about, the embedded video, the answers are going to show up here. Instructors can come in and help folks out. But the AI that is in the back end of our system is actually watching exactly what's happening. So it's watching the questions that are being asked. If an expert comes in and answers that question, it's going to index that answer and learn from it. Right. And these, of course, are people that you can identify as experts. You don't want anybody to be able to jump in and answer questions. But the idea is that the system learns over time. Someone comes in and asks about the mobile application or how that works. If someone has already asked that question, there is an answer. I don't need to ask it again. What that also means, though, is that the LMS itself is taking the training. So we've got the virtual coach, and this is our version of AI personified, and we can talk to it, we can give it some back and forth, but really what it's doing for us is it's going into the training. It's watching the videos, it's reading the documents, it has optical character recognition. So it's actually learning the material that you're putting in the system. So as somebody who is, let's say, a learner, I can go into a search and I'll find what I want, but I can also just ask the virtual coach first. So, what is Docebo Learning Analytics, or how do we run reports in Docebo? If there's training material in the system that lines up with that question, it will actually answer the question for you, right, in plain English, and it'll give you source documentation. This is something that's not new to Docebo. We've been doing this for quite a few years now, but I think it's something people are more familiar with these days, right? You've got your generative AIs and things like that. One of the things that we didn't want to do, though, and there you go, there's its answer, makes learning evaluation easy with tools to aggregate and measure everything in one place. What it's not doing is it's not being generative at this point. We don't want it to do that here. We have Shape for that. We can do generative AI. You don't want this to be generative because you don't want it to hallucinate. You don't want it to give an answer that is not directly from your training. So what it's doing is it's just really, really good at finding the answer, and it will only ever regurgitate exactly the answer that is in your training. You don't want it to extrapolate, right? And that's why it gives source documentation, and we can train it that answer was really positive. So, I mean, it's good that the AI is taking the training. It's good that we can be social. But one thing, of course, is I've shown you a lot of pages so far in this environment, the idea of different dashboards for different use cases. And, our customers can build dashboards however they want. And that includes creating a dashboard that's focused on social. But what that also means is that we have the ability to create dashboards that are specifically for, let's say, sales, let's say operations, let's say specific products. And we use Docebo at Docebo. It would be terrifying if we didn't. But we also, when it comes to the way that we do education and we use the Docebo environment, we're not stopping at, pure education and pure external facing training. We're also doing, HR based initiatives. So this is Lyceum. This is our actual environment. This is my platform. And I have access to our career commitment here at Docebo. And that's not necessarily formal training or a course I have to take. It is an initiative that the organization has and something that they want me to have access to. We've got a coding school that we're doing. We've got employee resource groups and policies. Okay, so policies make a lot of sense in a learning management platform. But when we think about, the coding school or resource groups or career growth, those are kind of things that we like to see hosted in an environment like this, because even though it's not wrapped in a course, the page builders themselves give you the ability to have really dynamic environments, really dynamic experiences. We have things where we did it for Halloween this year, where our whole dashboard changed to a Halloween theme, and that was like a temporary homepage. And it takes 20 minutes to put something like that together, but it can make a big impact on user activity. It can make people really want to come back in, right? And then, for example, growing at Docebo, that's a career thing that we're doing right now, and we've got enablement sessions and all kinds of facts and stuff like that deployed here. And you'll notice, again, this is not a formal course. This is just a page that we've designed for a specific use case.
And these pages, can they be public facing also, or only private facing?
Yeah, so we have the ability to do public facing pages, and I showed you a couple already. If I go back to the AWS world or the Zoom world, you'll notice I'm not signed in, and you can design different pages that articulate your subscription or whatever it is you're doing. So it's really up to you exactly what those public facing pages look like as well.
I see. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I'll get into how, you can configure all of this in a moment, but one of the other things that's really popular these days is the idea of skills and developing people's skills, making sure that we're pulling in skills information from, external sources of truth, right? It's not that every platform is, built to be a comprehensive front to back skills management system. If you want to, you can do skills from a bottom up approach and Docebo, where a learner indicates what the skills are that they want to learn and indicates their own skill level. And then, maybe a manager or somebody who can come in and make suggestions. Hey, I think you should be better at leadership because we identified you as a potential future leader. But in many situations, our customers choose to use a dedicated skills platform, right? And that might be an external skills platform, whatever it is, Fuel 50, there's all kinds of different ones out there. And we have the ability to integrate with those systems and basically make it a top-down approach where there's an external platform that's the source of truth for skills. And Docebo accepts those things and then tracks how people are using those skills and, whether they're developing them. Are you, going from an expert to, certified in a certain type of skill set? In order to make that happen, though, we had to make our skills completely configurable. So we do start with the skills ontology that you can just use. I think there's like 11,000 skills that you can select from and choose a list of, let's say, 150 that your organization cares about and wants to use. You can organize those skills into skill sets. So one for sales, one for marketing, one for solutions engineering, let's say. Or you can have your own custom skills. There are, organizations that call certain things, very, very unique things from an internal perspective. I remember we were working with a specific fitness organization, and they didn't call them certifications, they called them crunchifications, right? And so you can change any vernacular in the system, any skill in the environment, and then whether, someone's going to go through, like, let's say level 1 through 5 or intermediate, advanced, and expert. Either way, the system is going to track that growth over time, make suggestions based on what people like you are watching. And then also the virtual coach is able to make those suggestions too. So if you have certain skills, and it'll say, hey, people with the same job title as you, and maybe in the same region as you, or that speak the same language as you, typically take this course to drive a skill that you've indicated you're trying to be better at, right? And they've seen good outcomes. So the idea there is the system, again, is learning over time and getting better at making people excited about getting in here and using the system itself.
How do the courses and the content get attached to the skills model? The one that's imported or the custom one? Where does that connection come in?
So the system is going to suggest skills based on what you've put into the environment. And that works for both the actual formal training, the courses themselves, like a SCORM package or whatever it is, as well as individual assets. So let's say you're at your homepage and you wanted to, let's say from a social perspective, right? I'll go into the social area and I want to share something. Maybe I've got a link or a YouTube video that I thought was really good. And I don't have one handy, but I'll just do that. It'll go out to the environment that I indicated, right? So I just put YouTube. It's going to come up with a thumbnail. Again, I'm just using random YouTube there. And maybe if I said this is about, camera operation or something along those lines, you'll notice the skills that it originally came up with was based on the description, the metadata, and the information that I just put in. If it's a video, it's going to do its best to pull that from the video. If it was a link or a document, same thing. And you can see I used YouTube. So it goes, okay, well, that's social media. What skills are you likely working on here? Remember, it'll only surface the skills that you've indicated as a company you care about. These are some that I have in my platform. But if you're only working with 50 skills because you like it clean and tidy, then it might come up with 2 or 3 skills that match this content.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah. And you can see, by the way, I just changed it to camera operation and re-clicked skills. And now it's got live image mixing and video editing and shot selection, right? So this is something that it'll do obviously from a social perspective, but it helps our customers when they're building their own courses. Ultimately, we don't want to just automatically assign skills, but we do want to help with AI and make some suggestions so that the course author can kind of select the best ones.
Wow. Interesting. Nice approach.
Yeah. And I mean, when someone's sharing it, even from a social perspective, you might have a community-based learning environment where you are looking to have, industry knowledge and just, folks jumping in. You'll notice in our world, you have the ability to turn on expert peer review before things go live. So it's a balance between social learning, the AI helping to identify skills and push that content to the right people. But in certain environments, you've got to be a little bit more careful with that. And you'll notice that in this case, before it goes live, someone that has been identified as an expert is going to review that, make sure it's not a cat video, and then everything looks good. And yes, this is identified. The skills are correctly tagged. I'll allow this to be published, and then it goes live, and then it's something that's very social and we can be shared. Yeah, and I mean, from a learner's perspective, those are some of the key things that we're seeing are moving the needle these days. But John, what questions do you have so far?
Yeah, it's really interesting just from the skill standpoint. So, what I see in others is that it gets overwhelming and messy because there's like thousands and tens of thousands of skills. And so I like the kind of reverse approach is narrow down the skills first, and then it's only associating with that. And you can keep it nice and tidy, whatever that tidiness is, depending on your organization. That's a cool approach, and it makes it a lot more usable, I think, from a practical standpoint.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think one of the main approaches for us was we wanted our customers to choose between a top-down or a bottom-up approach, right? Because that's a fundamental difference. Some organizations treat it differently. Once you've made that choice, though, we do want the full power available to our administrators. So if I jump over as an admin here, there's a little bit more complexity here because you need that power. But you have the ability to simplify it for your learners, right? So in this world, we've got a platform catalog with 111 skills that have been selected. These are the ones we care about as an organization. But of course, I could go over here and create a new skill and pick from a list of Docebo skills, and there's up to 10,045, right? So we do have the ability to go down the route of all skills for all people. But like you said, most organizations do not want to play that game. They want very specific stuff. They might want to even create their own custom skills or select a list of 100 that matter to them, right?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, the other interesting piece is that we have AI that's throughout the system. I've mentioned this a few times. We also have this idea of building AI-based channels where you might identify, I want an AI-based channel that is focused on specific skills. So let's say we'll call it the finance skill set. There are 36 skills that we have identified for our finance team that we might think that they should be better at. And we can set up these skills in an AI-based channel so that any new content that hits the system, whether it's social, formal, anything along those lines, the platform will automatically recognize it and say, hey, I just looked at this content. I think this is additional material that would be interesting for the finance team, and it'll put it in that AI-based channel as well. So one of the other things is we do try to call out wherever AI helped, both from a learner perspective and from an admin side of things, because it changes people's mindset, right? When an AI is making a suggestion, you look at it a little bit more critically because you want to make sure that this looks good. I'm going to add that into the channel. But the idea here is that the AI can help you aggregate that content, especially when you start getting to hundreds or even thousands. We've got customers with tens of thousands of videos. The AI helps a lot at that point.
Mm-hmm. So it's going past title, metadata, and description. This is the point where it's reading and learning the content, and then it's aggregating it.
Yeah, so we have optical character recognition for documents, and we have the ability to do transcription for videos and audio. So it'll actually transcribe it, and then it runs through the transcription and tries to understand the basic context. What are we talking about? Where are we going? And that content, I mean, we've talked so far a lot from inside of the Docebo environment, right? And we can go in, we'll talk a little bit about administration and how we set some of this up. But ultimately, one of the other pieces of our puzzle is from a content creation perspective, you may have just PDFs, right? And our system, you can upload those PDFs and our system will take in those PDFs and it'll work great and it'll run. But one of the other pieces of the puzzle is the way that we manage content creation through Shape, right? And I mean, I'll just play a quick video and kind of talk through it. But the idea here is that with Shape, you may have a content digest that you're working through. You may have, let's say, internal sales enablement that you're wanting to empower people with. What you typically have is a series of documents or examples. What does good look like, right? And the idea here is, from a content creation perspective, you may want to say, okay, let's take a quick preview of what I'm going to output here. What kind of activities are going to come from this? Is it going to generate tests for me and quizzes, right? And I want a simulation at the end of this to actually engage with the end learner. So the system is going to guide people through step by step. What aspects of sales conversations would you like to focus on? In this case, we'll focus on like an elevator pitch. We'll keep it short and sweet. But we have the ability now to interact with the content creation engine. This allows people who are not learning specialists to create high quality content because they're asked all the right questions. They get the context that they need from an instructional design perspective, and they might just be SMEs from sales, right? But they can now create an experience that actually makes sense for, folks that are going through onboarding or trying to get better at sales. And we have the ability to give it context. So in this case, we're going to give it a few pitch examples, some documentation, some material that we've been using to create our content. And maybe this is the stuff they just went through, right? From a formal training perspective, maybe it's a video that they just watched or a document they just read on how Docebo does pitches. It'll come up with the idea of what it believes is good content. Of course, you could edit this at any point. Identify the key talking points. You can change these too, or you can, reorganize them and say, actually, let's focus on, delivering value to your prospect first before you get to your pitch. And ultimately, the system is going to try and create content that's compelling. And I mean, it's going to give you a starting point, right? And so we can jump into an elevator pitch here. And your color, your company colors might be different. They might not be hot pink, and you can change the themes and the backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. But what it's trying to do is guide people through the experience, give them access to the quotes and the examples that you had in your training, quiz them briefly on whether they understood the key concepts, and then once they go through the quiz, they can engage in an actual simulation. And the cool thing here is that the simulated prospect is going to be asking questions based on the context you gave it as an author. So, Docebo, hey, you're not the cheapest solution on the market. So the simulated prospect might push back against pricing, might push back against, some aspect of your features or functions that you're trying to train against. So we had to make this really quick because it needs to feel natural. So as a seller, you're talking directly into your camera, you're recording it. The AI is measuring not just the words you say, but your inflections, your speech patterns. Are you too high pitched? Are you too slow? Are you confident sounding? And when the AI responds, it responds audibly. So we have not just speech to text, but text back to speech, back to the learner. And it all happens very close to real time. So it feels natural from a conversational perspective. So the seller goes through this experience. Let's just end the simulation. And the end result is a summary of how did you do based on the original author's goals. We wanted you to highlight the common challenges that your customers have, the unique differentiator of your organization, right? It gives you overall feedback, but we can dive deeper. We can understand what are my strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, this guy didn't do particularly well. He was developing in a lot of different pieces, but the AI is, like I said, not just looking at the words you use, but the confidence and the tone that you use when you're going through your sales pitch. So we're really excited about this. This is more in the generative space, right? And it's going to highlight your clarity and your energy and where it thinks that you could improve.
Wow. All right. Some questions. A lot of this is new
Sure.
for me and everybody else. So I'm trying to just get clear in my mind what's part of the product, and then what's kind of on the client's shoulders to build out. So it seems like the simulation is something that you provide, and then the client can tailor. All right.
Yes.
How
Yeah.
about that instructional design? Those questions that were coming around the sales process, was that something that you had the client has to teach us about how we do sales, or do you come with like a suggested instructional design for sales, to teach sales or how to sell something, and then they work from there? That part I wasn't clear on.
It's a good question. And yes, we're starting from a point where the AI has been pre-trained on what questions to ask the author. And so if you're using from a sales enablement perspective, we're calling them like a sales AI brain, right? Or onboarding brain. And the idea is we've trained, and you remember those use cases from before, we've trained our systems to respect those different situations. So in this case, we're looking at elevator pitches. The questions that it asks are branching from that moment. So remember, it's asked what kind of sales training are you trying to do? Elevator pitch? Great. Let's focus on a specific product then. We don't want to give, the whole kit and caboodle away for an elevator pitch. And then it goes to the next and the next question. So that is it after being pre-trained specifically on sales enablement. Our customers don't have to do that.
Wow. That's cool. I haven't seen it like that. That's what I see out in the industry is, the innovative stuff is the creation of the content, from the original sources, similar to what you do. But the difference is the simulation, and then the big difference, in my opinion, is tailoring it to the use case, because now that's getting, no pun intended, that's getting useful, in a hurry.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the goal, is that we're trying to make sure that we're not dragging our feet when it comes to AI, but we're also moving forward in a way that we're not just throwing generative AI at everything. There are points, for example, with a virtual coach where you truly don't want that, right? You truly don't want it to be creative in its answers, because you have a true answer and you have a line that the company has to stick to. And ultimately, one of the other things that we wanted to focus on is the reporting aspect of all of this. So when we think about, when you've created your content, you've put this all out into the environment, Now, what kind of reports can you run? This is also going to be pretty exciting for you because this is something we're rolling out very soon, which is insights. We have standard reports, we have your CSV, and we can create dashboards and things like that. But when we think about the way that we're measuring the attendance trends or the rates at which people are showing up to certain courses or training, all of that can be found in the back end of our system, including, hey, there's a certain amount of hours of training that we've delivered, and, are certain instructors more prolific? All of these are also, you can drill into them. So we can dive deeper into any of these aspects. Maybe I wanted to look at, course enrollments and completions specifically. We've got, first of all, a starting dashboard to go from. But if there's any aspect of this that I want to drill into, like let's say I want to see more about who's enrolled, I can drill into that. Or if I want to see, a certain group information, I can double click into this and understand more about that group. And of course, all of the filters that you would expect are available here too. This includes the idea of groups, user additional fields, as well as branches. And this stuff is dynamic, right? When we think about branches, that's typically our customer's organizational hierarchy. It's a list of, internal versus external, Toronto, office, those kind of things. Where groups is, though, is it's like a many-to-many relationship. Myself, for example, I'm, in solutions engineering. I'm probably in that one branch, right? That's solutions engineering. And I might be in the Toronto office in that branch. But with groups, I might be in 20, 30 different groups at once. I might be in a group of all customer-facing people who have conversations with John, right? People who have blue hair. There's any kinds of, user qualities that would put me into these groups. And you can filter against that, or you can build those experiences at the beginning we were showing you based on those groups. That's where the groups come together to create the lattice of what your user experience is in Docebo, but also which reports you show up in.
Nice.
Yeah. And I guess an equally important when we think about a reporting perspective is when we think about, diving deeper into course management and how we actually see the results from within a course, right? If you've got a course that has been running for a while and you're starting to, okay, we've got some trends, maybe we launched it a couple of weeks ago. We've got some people that are in progress and things like that. One of the important pieces is you can see the journey that people are taking through the training. So in this case, again, maybe it's only been running for a week or so, we are seeing a lot of people are starting at the beginning. We've got folks getting right up until the SCORM quiz that we put together. And it looks like a lot of people are completing it. Some people are never really getting through the entire experience, and everyone's dropping off right after that training. So it might behoove us then to reformat this and split off that second and third and fourth package into their own kind of pieces of the training puzzle. That's why we have learning plans. You don't need to jam everything into a single course because you'll start to see some of these drop-offs. If you do see these drop-offs, no problem. Go into the training material, find the point where people are falling off. It looks like they're falling off between folder 1 and 2. And we can split all of this off into its own distinct course if we want to, because you have the reporting to track that journey that people are taking. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what questions do you have from a reporting and analytics perspective? What have you seen as, exciting in the field these days that people want to see more of?
Yeah, this is, what you're looking for is the ability to create anything and get to anything. How about what's the story when it comes to external data? Like combining this data with CRM or I don't know, customer performance data. Is that something that you do intra at Docebo? Is it more, you provide bridges to push your data out appropriately to others or combinations? What's the strategy there?
There's a couple options that we've seen, customers of ours use. We do have the ability to simply automate the export of information out of the environment into an external environment. We call it learn data. And basically how it works is you've got your learn environment where you would schedule an update, let's say every hour, every 2 hours. You might want this near real time as well, depending on if you've got like a data lake or a data warehouse that you have. This is very much enterprise level stuff, right? If you've got a very enterprise level business, you've got like a Tableau, Power BI that you have on your side. What we have internally is a Snowflake data warehouse where you can do an ETL operation from. as an organization, pull all of that data out. And what Docebo is doing is we are transforming the raw data and optimizing it so that it can be easily consumed by a data warehouse or a data lake if you'd like to pull that out. Now, this is the very data pipeline, data bridge kind of way of doing this. We also have a Salesforce managed package, right? If you just want the data to show up in your Salesforce CRM and you want to run a report in Salesforce on this, we just have a managed package that you can install. It's a little more straightforward than this.
That's it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, ultimately, the end goal here is, let me just get through a couple slides here. You might have your own, environment that you're doing your analytics in, and you typically want to translate it, your LMS data from raw data into charts and graphs and visualizations. I mean, that's the end goal. We can do that internally. As you saw, we have our own charts and visualizations, but a lot of the times you're trying to tell that story, right? Hey, are people who take more training hitting their first sale faster from a sales perspective? Are we seeing, from an employee performance perspective, we're doing internal training with our ticket specialists, and we're pulling information from Zendesk and we're pulling information from Docebo and saying, yeah, more educated people are closing tickets faster, and we're seeing less escalations out of that group.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is where organizations are aiming for these days from a learning and management perspective, because they have to prove ROI, right?
Sure.
It's getting harder and harder to get budgets these days, especially when you're on the L&D team. It's typically the first thing that people look sideways at. So if you can kind of tell that story comprehensively and integrate with your environment and integrate with your ecosystem that exists at your workplace, it's a lot easier to defend that story. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where we all want to go.
Yeah. And I mean, it starts with your basic import and export. If you have, let's say, Salesforce is a good example, but you might have an HRIS or like Workday, where you have your user data stored and potentially you're pushing your certifications out to. You can use that, data warehouse integration workflow, or we have something called Docebo Connect, right? Which basically allows you to build low code integrations. Trigger on a schedule, let's say go out to Workday, pull a report from Workday, and push all of your users into the environment right now.
Nice.
Yeah. And this works for import and export as well. I mean, the idea here is that once you set something like this up, you shouldn't have to go back to your IT team every 20 days to reconfigure your integration, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How many different systems can you integrate from Connect?
Technically, if the other system has open APIs, we have the ability to integrate with it. So it's kind of hard to put a number on it. I think in terms of just standard connectors, there's north of 100 standard connectors, and we start at the largest, most common integrations and work backwards from there. You can always go to our website. There's a list that's there that I'm not going to list all 150 or something of the integrations.
Well, you don't know them by heart.
I don't know them by heart yet. I have only been here for 5 years, so I'm in the process. But
all right.
once you bring that data in, like I mentioned, like the way that our system creates groups is actually really interesting, because it gives our customers the ability to say, okay, so we got that information from an HR system. We know who this person is, but maybe I want to say, okay, it could be basic. If your job role is solutions consultant, then you get this dashboard, this training, this material. But maybe I want to make something a little bit more comprehensive and say, well, I also want to make sure that you've completed your security training, right? Like I mentioned. So, once you've completed the security training, and let's say you have an area where you operate in a certain warehouse or something along those lines, right? You may have really interesting workflows, like business logic workflows that you want to build into the system. And one of the reasons we wanted to be able to do it here is a lot of the times the customers that we're working with in the L&D space, they don't always have full control of the HRIS data that's being pushed out from that environment. A lot of the times they're dealing with, hey, here's the fields we have to work with, and we have to create the educational experience based on those fields. This allows our customers to actually build in the business logic so they don't have to go to the HR team and say, I need a new field in the HR system. You just take what you have, tell the story, and then push them into the solutions consultants that have completed security training. And you might come up with a better name than I do.
Might need some generative AI.
Yeah, generative AI, just stick it everywhere in the system. I think that's a big part of why the experience can be so dynamic, can change depending on who someone is and what they need in the environment. And ultimately, when we think about managing at a larger scale, a lot of the times we need sub administrators, people with not total access to the system, but a lot of LMS environments these days or learning platforms, they come with 2 or 3 administrative experiences. And what we've been able to do is give our customers the ability to create custom admin profiles, right? Things that highlight, hey, you're an instructor. And as a result of that, we're going to give you very specific permissions over a very specific audience, right? So it gives them the power to do something like that.
Yeah, no, I verify that. I think even 2 or 3 admin positions is generous. So everybody has prepackaged rules. What everybody also has is varying levels of configurability on those roles. But it stops short. It stops short about what they can conceive in advance, and whatever the LMS vendor can conceive, the very next customer has a different requirement. In my experience, so you got to make it so say that you can align to any of those scenarios, and I could see how groups facilitates that. That's cool. It's almost like a CRM with the if and this that these things.
If and contains all that kind of stuff, and again, from a power user perspective, it is entirely possible that you create a power user profile that all they can do is run evaluations, or all they can do is create courses in the HR space. We want you to have course creation capability, but only in this one specific domain, right? So we have that power. And again, I guess the other piece of the puzzle to show, we showed some of the content creation, some of the analytics that you can run as a result of that. But we find a lot of our customers they don't have the time and energy to create their own material. And so, of course, I guess I'll leave you with this thought is, if you need to, you can, of course, reach into our library. So we've got a content hub where you can take all kinds of different training, dive into different categories of learning, and this is all off the shelf training. So it's covering the other end of that spectrum where we can create content, we can deliver it, but you may also just want to purchase it off the shelf, right?
Wow, great! What an overview. We could probably keep going for days.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn and there's a lot that you can do, but I think this is a really good high level overview. And of course, if you've got other questions, we're happy to answer and dive deeper in another call.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this was great, and exactly what I wanted here for our audiences to be able to see the innovation. There's all kinds of stuff. I do this for a living. Obviously, I'm looking at new systems every day, but I saw all kinds of new stuff today I haven't seen. Even since the last time that we talked. So I love to see the AI pushing in all levels. I think my favorite thing today, this looks so great, but my favorite thing today is the use case AI in shape content authoring. That is like the biggest step forward in the industry. And I think it's really going to change how people think of really meshing the power of instructional design and AI and this generative AI, bringing all that together all in one central place to really, really be productive. And that's just one aspect of what I saw today. That was cool. But, that AI through content recommendations, through the skill and competency or the skill management and tying that piece was really neat. Using companies like AWS and Zoom that are using, customer facing. Docebo's is great. And, so you have all the content, you can measure all the content. The AI that's reading the content on the inside and actually taking it is really cool. Turning that into the virtual assistant where you're keeping track of that and identifying the experts and assigning skills, and then using the skills in the grouping engine to put those group experts into different groups and manage those differently, are all levels of power that you don't get to see every day. And so that's just from the high level overview, as you said. And so this is really getting good. I've been following audience and Scott. I've been following no kidding for about 10 years now, just shy of 10 years. I've been watching this platform grow, and it's just yeah, I'm just so amazed at where you've been able to push this thing after all these years. It's really leading the industry, and I can see why you're the fastest growing LMS. It's really applicable to a lot of different use cases.
Been a wild ride.
So yeah, cool. Lucky you. Lucky you. Well, there you have it, folks. There's another episode of the Talented Learning Demonstration Series. You see why it's my favorite series of content. This is cool stuff. You can't see it anywhere else. If you saw anything you liked here, navigate to docebo.com. There's lots of ways and lots of resources, lots of ways to engage with them there and to learn more. So there you have it, Scott. Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thanks for having us.
You bet.
Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another Talented Learning production. You can find more of our fiercely independent content on learning systems technology at talentedlearning.com. If you want to show your support, please like and share this video and enter a comment down below and like our YouTube channel. It'd be greatly appreciated and very helpful for us to spread the word. And if you need some independent assistance or guidance in your upcoming learning management system or learning system selection project, please navigate to talentedlearning.com, where you can request a complimentary consultation call with me, John Lay, the lead analyst and founder of Talented Learning. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you on the next.